Hi, I'm Jess, and I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks on how to travel with reptiles. Depending on your circumstances, you're probably not going to be traveling that often with your reptiles. It is something that I do pretty frequently. I actually do educational programs for local schools and I use my reptiles, so we're pretty used to traveling. So I just kind of wanted to talk about how I do that, how I set them up, and just some tips about how to travel with reptiles in general. Before I show how I kind of set them up for traveling, I do want to say that what I'm going to be saying mostly has to do with short trips. I have traveled for multiple hours with these guys, but typically we're only spending 30 to 45 minutes in the car to and from these schools. So that's the kind of traveling setup I'm going to be talking about today. When it comes to their travel bins, all my reptiles have different sized plastic bins. I just find that these are a lot easier to clean out. They're lightweight, obviously, so they're not super heavy, and it just makes it a little bit easier. I will also say that the bins I have are ones that have pretty good locking mechanisms. This is because a lot of reptiles are escape artists. I don't have that issue with a lot of my guys, but it's still best to be on the safe side. Just get things that are really secure and are able to close pretty tightly. After purchasing these bins to use specifically for travel, I took a soldering pen and melted holes all along the side of each of these bins. As you can see, there is quite a few. I also went ahead and melted holes in the lids of all of these as well. This is just kind of a safety precaution because what if they're secure in somewhere that's blocking off the sides of this thing or blocking off the top? That way, just to be safe, they've got plenty of ventilation holes on the top and the sides of their bins. When it comes to what I put in these bins for traveling, I don't put Boone in. No, I don't. When it comes to how I set these bins up for travel, it's really simple. To set these bins up, all I typically do is put in a towel. I don't typically put any decor, any water dishes, or anything like that in these because I don't want it to be sliding around and actually potentially harm the reptile while we're traveling. I use the towel because it makes them feel a little bit more comfy. It gives them traction on this slippery plastic, and if they wanted to, they can actually, hide around in here, get under it, or just be a little bit more comfy in there in general. So once all the reptiles are in their bin, I actually take all of their bins and put them into a larger one. So for example, since Odie's is by far the biggest, his typically goes on the bottom, and then I kind of just stack them in there how they best fit. Whenever I do this, since the bins I'm using are plastic and obviously see-through, I actually take extra towels and put it in between each of the bins. This is because I don't want them to see each other when they're in here, see another reptile, and stress themselves out by trying to interact with it or just getting overwhelmed because they can see another reptile and they think that they're in the same space. So once all the bins are in there and I put the towels in between them like I said, that's when I kind of put in the supplies I think I might need while I'm there. So I always bring some water with me. So I put that down in the bottom, and I always bring little easy plastic Tupperware dishes for water. Just easier to transport, easier to just throw them in there. I always bring trash bags, and I always bring paper towels because my reptiles like to use the restroom in the car. It's not very convenient, especially when we are traveling a lot, but I always bring that just in case it happens. So the other supplies you need for your reptiles pretty much depends on your circumstances. For me, since I'm only traveling to and from these schools, I don't really have to worry about bringing heating stuff, but I always bring a low wattage lamp and a low wattage heat pad just in case. Something else is I bought a car adapter that actually has a normal outlet on it just as an extra safety precaution because my heat lamps, my heat pad, they don't have the USB outlet, they just have these normal ones. So this is something that's really useful, and I've actually used it a few times to plug my fan in when it's got a little bit too warm for these guys while traveling. So once everyone is in the larger bin, I put the lid on, which as you can see also has lots of ventilation holes drilled into it. This large tote that I got, it actually has wheels on this side, so it's super convenient for me. It makes it a lot easier bringing these guys all together into the schools. So if that's like you're moving your reptiles a lot like that, I highly suggest getting something with wheels because it makes your life a lot easier. I know that was a pretty general overview of traveling with reptiles, and it mostly has to do with the short durations like I said, but just to kind of recap, just make sure your reptiles are going to be safe, especially if you're driving in the car. You don't want anything to be able to hurt them or for them to be able to hurt themselves. So it's just best to always be on the safe side when you're transporting your reptiles. And like I said, I know it sounds like common sense, but make sure there's holes poked in everything and that you're not blocking those holes when you're traveling, because they need air and they need to breathe, and they can get really hot in those bins, especially depending on how long they're going to be in them. If you are planning on traveling further distances with your reptiles or planning on staying somewhere with them, I'm sure that there are videos out there of how to plan and prep for that. But like I said, this is for those really short distances when we're only in the car for 30 to 45 minutes. We're only staying at these schools for a few hours, and they're definitely not spending the night anywhere. So if that's what you're looking for, I'm sure there's videos out there. I know there's probably some websites or some articles or stuff you can read. So if that's more what you're looking for, I'm sure that it's out there and that you can find it. So all of that being said, I just kind of wanted to show how I'm typically traveling with my reptiles, how we kind of do things on a weekly basis, and just show how I've made it easier for myself and what I found keeps them safe when I'm traveling with them.